and welcome to this discussion on the Silk Road, which I think Mircea Joană rather did my job. He described what a vast and important subject it is. I think we've all heard of the Silk Road. It has been around for thousands of years. It's very important to our planet, linking east to west. It has importance for trade, politics, commerce, military, culture, and even religion. So it's a vast subject. We'll try and make it a little bit narrower today. And what does it mean in today's world? As Mircea Joană says, along this road we have what's happening in the former Soviet Union with Ukraine and Russia, what's happening in ISIS, and also all the other challenges, which we won't have time to discuss today. We'll start, and after my panelists have given how they see the Silk Road, we will then open the floor, and I hope you will all take the opportunity to take part in this discussion with my distinguished guests and ask some questions, because I think if everybody takes part, this will be a much more enjoyable and lively discussion. And considering today I have a slight geographic theme, we started with the east. We'll now go to the far west of the Silk Road, which is the still United Kingdom, and London. So we have Mr. Ian Bond. He's the director of the Foreign Policy Centre for European Reform in London.
One thing that strikes me looking at this panel, and I don't know whether it's deliberate or accidental, is that we have a ghost at the feast, continuing the Scottish theme. There needs somewhere on this platform to be an empty chair for Russia, because it has a role in almost every subject that we have been discussing today, but we haven't really heard from the Russians what their perspective on all of this is. I was rather relieved to find that I agreed with Mr. Friedman, because it's always a bad position to be in to disagree with him, I think. But I mean, essentially, if you look along the length of the Silk Road, first of all, it may indeed be one road or one belt from a potential trading perspective, but what's quite noticeable is that most of the countries along it are heading off in their own different directions, whether that is, in the case of Moldova, Ukraine and Georgia, towards the European Union at a pace faster than the European Union is quite comfortable with and slower than any of them are quite comfortable with, or in the case of, let's say, Armenia, a rather reluctant acceptance of the Russian embrace, or as you move further east, a somewhat more enthusiastic attempt by Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan to get some of the benefits of a relationship with Russia, an effort from Kazakhstan to keep a multi-vector policy and to keep on good terms with everybody, and an attempt by Uzbekistan to stay on bad terms with everybody. So you've got a very disparate group of countries, and it's hard for me to see at the moment how you get them pulling in the same directions on most of the policy issues. And then in the background to that, you have Russia as a complicating factor. I liked the description from Mr. Shen of China's policy of equality and of, in a sense, welcoming free riders. That is absolutely not the policy that is being pursued by Moscow. And that seems to me to be one of the fundamental roadblocks for this Silk Road. If you look particularly in Central Asia at the implications of the Eurasian Economic Union, which Putin is trying to construct, it's clear that this is intended as an example of closed regionalism, in which you put up higher tariff barriers and you seek to disadvantage countries like China, which are trying to trade and invest in the region, rather than the sort of open regionalism, which I think Mr. Shen was referring to, where actually everybody might benefit from this arrangement. And it does seem to me that, first of all, China has been smarter than Russia in this, and if it is able to proceed down this route, is likely to be a major beneficiary, particularly in Central Asia. But also that the more successful China is in pursuing this, the more likely it is that it will find Russia actively trying to block its interests in the region, just as Russia has tried to block the open regional approach that the EU has taken through the Eastern Partnership. It was never the intention, and the Eastern Partnership is not structured to prevent any of its member states trading with Russia or having close economic ties to Russia, but the very fact of a competing vision has been interpreted by Russia as a threat. So I think that's something to look at. Looking a bit further ahead, the other thing that strikes me about this region is that even if the Russians were not present, there are a number of factors of instability that we need to find some way at least of managing, even if we can't prevent them. The first of those is the regional conflicts that exist in this area. And that's not just the obvious ones, such as the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, which has become hotter this summer with more shooting incidents along the line of contact between Armenia and Azerbaijan than we have seen in many years. But it's also the more undeclared conflicts in Central Asia between Uzbekistan and its neighbours, and indeed between Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan. And one of the factors there, which is particularly difficult to deal with, is the growing water stress of Central Asia. A large chunk of the Aral Sea has now, I think, officially dried up. And there is a real problem over the differing interests of downstream countries and upstream countries, which is going to get worse if Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan dam the rivers that they control and thereby deprive Uzbekistan and to some extent Kazakhstan and Turkmenistan of the benefits of the water that they currently rely on for their agriculture. And that's an issue which I know the World Bank has tried to deal with in the past, the OSCE has tried to deal with without much success. Hitherto, Uzbekistan has preferred to try to deal with its neighbours on a unilateral or a bilateral basis, and the neighbours have been reluctant to be bound into anything that they would see as disadvantaging them. But it seems to me that that's an issue which, if this Silk Road is to have any validity, the rest of the international community is going to have to address again, because otherwise there will be another series of roadblocks along the road in the form of conflicts between the states on it. And the last thing that seems to me to be a problem that we have to deal with is succession in the states of Central Asia. And this again is an area where I think China may actually have a special role to play. I may not agree with the Chinese political system, and I might wish that it had more elements of democracy in it. But one thing you can say is that China has devised a successful method of generational change within a party structure. There is no sign that any of the regimes of Central Asia have got that. I think the Turkmens, more by luck than judgment, managed to get over the problems of the death of the Turkmenbashi. But as you look at the situation in Uzbekistan with the president's daughter under house arrest, and you look at the rather threatening comments by President Putin, which at least to me seem to imply that all bets about Kazakhstan's future were off once President Nazarbayev left the scene, then I think that this question of how institutions can be built in Central Asia, with or without democratic institutions, is one that we need to look at quite seriously. And further west along the Silk Route, and this will be my last thought, the EU needs to put a lot more effort into the three countries of the Eastern Partnership who have shown themselves more or less interested in getting closer to Europe, that's to say Georgia, Moldova and Ukraine, and less effort into worrying about Belarus and Azerbaijan, which are clearly going off in a different direction, and keeping a door open to Armenia, which may eventually be able to walk through it, but doesn't seem able to be at the moment. If we can't help Georgia, Moldova and Ukraine to build sustainable institutions and economies which provide a good level of prosperity for the people, then for the European Union we are going to have another set of zones of instability on our borders. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much, Ian, and thank you for bringing up the issue of Russia.